Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and today on The Detail, the Wellington mayoralty race. It was looking like a rather bland affair until the unexpected return of dirty politics.
Well, the bizarre thing is, it's simultaneously the most boring campaign and the most chaotic one. Andrew Little could very easily walk this in without proposing anything particularly controversial, without any particularly notable policies. So in one way it's dull, and yet in another way it's going to be fascinating, because I think there's going to be a lot more rocky stuff to happen. I think there's going to be a lot more interesting chaos and scandals along the way. I think it's going to be a very fun one to watch, even if the outcome is fairly predictable.
The race to be Wellington's next mayor took a crazy turn last week.
I'll tell you what, things have got very interesting in the Wellington mayoralty race.
Well, the race for the Wellington mayoralty just got a little bit dirtier, with new claims published this morning in the New Zealand Herald.
Chung has sent an email to 3 of his fellow councillors with the heading, "A sordid night on the town,"
in which he claimed Tory whānau had a night of debauchery.
He claimed Tory had, quote, drug-fuelled tempestuous sex, and made references to her having pendulous soft breasts.
It's fair to say mayoral hopeful Ray Chung has scored a spectacular own goal with revelations last week that he'd sent an email to fellow councillors with bizarre claims in it about the current mayor. Chung has produced no evidence to back up his story. Tory whānau says it's a load of rubbish and she can prove she was elsewhere that night. She's now seeking legal advice. The email was sent 2 years ago, but it's now been leaked to whānau, who sent it to the media last week to highlight the abuse she and other female politicians endure.
She said this sort of behaviour is unbecoming for a public official. It's creepy, it's gross.
The fallout for Chung was instant.
Wellington councillor Ray Chung's mayoral campaign is in tatters this afternoon. One of his key backers, this is Mark Denijczyk, he's formally withdrawn his public support after today's email scandal.
And it's been perfect fodder for rival mayoral candidates like Andrew Little, who was quick to release a social media video standing on much higher moral ground.
I always said on my campaign I wasn't going to talk about others, but today I'm going to make an exception. You might have seen the news about what the people behind the Ray Chung and Independent Together are doing. They put together a dirt file on other candidates. It's toxic, rubbish stuff that we just don't need in Wellington.
Joel McManus is the Wellington editor of The Spin-Off. He's been watching it all unfold and has written opinion pieces on the scandal and Ray Chung this week. It's fair to say he hasn't held back.
I think Chung is an erratic figure. I've described him as Trump without the tactics, Winston Peters without the wit, Wayne Brown without the brains.
Is it dirty politics, Joel? Can we call it dirty politics?
I mean, you certainly can, but if we're talking about the origin of dirty politics and the way we talk about it, that Nikki Hagar book, that was a type of politics that had strategy and tactics and underhandedness. This is, this is a lot clumsier and a lot stupider than that.
Is it more just sordid politics?
It's just sordid, it's just a bit gross, and it's very high school.
We'll have more from Joel in a moment, including a response to this comment about his reports by the platform's Sean Plunkett.
I'd have to say it's probably one of the most blatantly biased pieces of political writing I've ever seen in all my life, and coming from such a pimply-faced little stuck-up millennial, it's amazing.
But first, how did the orgy and drugs rumours start, and why did Ray Chung email 3 fellow councillors about it? Well, he told journalists the gossip was shared with him by a neighbour more than a couple of years ago while he was out walking his dog. It was about 2 months after the last local body elections.
Then I was quite, I don't know what I thought. Whether I was flabbergasted or astounded or something. I didn't know what to actually do with this information. It is, an issue, and it affects the reputation of the city.
So he felt the right thing to do was tell 3 other councillors, close colleagues of his, and he put the details in an email, sending it to their personal email addresses. Apparently, none of them replied. But he never thought to first clarify the story with the Mayor, a story she absolutely denies, or verify it with the young man supposedly involved, the son of the neighbour, who was the source of the gossip.
He's also said it wasn't his next-door neighbour, so it's just someone that lives nearby him that supposedly has a son. I mean, it's obviously not true. Like, he's just making things up.
But last week, Chung told ZB the conversation did happen and he believed his neighbour's story.
I don't see why he should actually tell me these things without being some substance behind it, because he wasn't to know that I was actually going to walk past his house.
You ever had any drugs or done any orgies, Ray?
Never, sadly.
Would you like to have?
Well, the opportunity has never been there.
This week, Chung took the opportunity to pull a U-turn. In an email, he apologised to whānau, and in a video released to social media, he admitted he had regrets, and then he also claimed to now be a victim in this scandal.
Over the last week, there's been a concerted campaign against me and my bid for the Wellington mayoralty. An email that I sent privately over 2.5 years ago to 3 of my council colleagues was passed to media. This was done deliberately to discredit me. I regret writing it and regret sharing it with people whom I thought trustworthy. It is unfortunate that a private message has been used in such a political way. This attack on me and our team of Independent Together candidates is designed to undermine our campaign. Because of this blatant political attack, I was recently abused when walking to a meeting in Johnsonville. I want to make it crystal clear, this did not start with me or our team. I have not and will not conduct personal attacks against other candidates in this election. I will play the ball, not the person. Dirty politics will not be tolerated. I will call it out.
Then cue another twist. The Prime Minister, who normally gives local body elections a wide berth, waded in this week.
I'll just say to you, I think the email was entirely inappropriate and utterly unacceptable, but ultimately it's up to the fine people of Wellington, who I'm sure will work through who they would like to represent them.
Is he sort of adjacent to the National Party at all? I mean,
Not that
on the right?
I've never met him. I don't remember meeting him. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you who he is or point out who he is.
So should Chung step down or withdraw from the race?
Well, Raymond Chung has surely scuppered his chances of becoming Wellington's next mayor, hasn't he? Surely.
Well, not so, according to Joel McManus, who is watching the race closely. In fact, he expects more dirty politics.
I am absolutely expecting more to come out. Firstly, just because I think there is a very strong chance that Ray Chung, just knowing who he is as a person and a candidate, will continue to do things like this. I think there will be more that comes out. I think he will say more unguarded, irresponsible things. And the kind of crowd that he's associating with, he has formed this party that insists it isn't a party, called Independent Together, which is an oxymoronic name, and they're funded by a group called Better Wellington. And Better Wellington have... The people involved in Better Wellington are some figures who have a history of dodgy play in New Zealand politics. Glenn Inwood being a case in point. He has been involved in whale lobbying, literally lobbying for the whaling industry, anti-trans candidacy, tobacco lobbying. There's a history of underhanded tactics here, and we saw just last week Better Wellington put out a dossier about left-wing candidates in Wellington, which was full of climate denialism, a lot of race baiting, taking aim at candidates' children. This is the kind of stuff we're dealing with, and I'm expecting to see more of it.
But are Wellingtonians liking this? Are they backing Ray Chung, or do you think it's all over for him now?
There is definitely a sizable portion of Wellingtonians that like what Ray Chung's selling, mostly because there is a genuine frustration at rates rises in Wellington. There's been a 12% rates rise. There's been rates rises in most cities, that is pretty dire. And Ray has been the loudest and most prominent candidate, calling for fiscal conservatism. So there is a genuine energy behind that. But I think possibly Ray and his allies overstate or overestimate the number of Wellingtonians who get behind this kind of politics. Because really you're talking about a city which historically votes pretty liberal, historically is well-educated, has certain ideas about the world, don't particularly like this kind of rumour mill, scummy kind of politics. And yeah, I think this has certainly derailed his campaign. Since Andrew Little entered the race, it was unlikely he was going to win. I think it looks incredibly unlikely now.
Because who is the real frontrunner here? Is it Andrew Little? Is it his to lose, really?
Yeah, I think you'd have to say that. Since Tory whānau exited the race, she's now just running in the Māori ward to be a councillor. The field has somewhat cleared for Andrew Little, but almost even before that, Andrew Little entered the race. He's clearly a cut above everyone else in terms of, competence, experience, being a credible politician who people know and generally trust. I think where Andrew Little's, where the risk is for him really is does he give people something to vote for? There's a play of doing I'm the adult in the room, everyone else is chaotic, just vote for me because I'm sensible. And, and that is very appealing, but also people do want a reason to vote for someone. And I think we saw that last time. Paul Eagle sort of ran that play and Tory whānau ended up running away with it because she was kind of pitching something clearly different. So yeah, you've got Andrew Little, who I think has to be considered the front runner. Ray Chung has a lot of money behind him and a lot of support. He's sort of running on this fiscal conservative track. We've seen Alex Baker, who's sort of a green-aligned candidate, has emerged on the left. He is at least giving some form of challenge to Andrew Little on the left and is looking to start a bit of a debate about transport, rates reform, some of the big issues, even if he might not have sort of that level of experience you might expect from a mayoral candidate. And then there's sort of a few other sort of minor people in the background of various levels of seriousness also running.
A courier poll commissioned by right-wing campaign group Better Wellington and released in April showed Chung had the most support for mayor. It should be noted Andrew Little wasn't standing at that stage.
My theory on that is that they released that polling quite early as a tactic to clear that right lane, to send the signal that Ray Chung was the leading candidate there, and in a way to sort of try and scare off any other candidates from challenging him in that lane. But yeah, I mean, I think certainly several months out from the election, it was looking at the case. There was genuine, I think, frustration about rates rises, rising costs especially, and Ray Chung was that loudest and most prominent voice opposing Mayor Tory whānau. But I would also just say that I put very little faith in, well, for one, in local election polling this far out from an election, and in local polling in general. New Zealand does not have a particularly strong track record of polling individual electorates in the general election or at polling mayoral races. This is something that is, for one, very up in the air, very open to change, and two, just very hard to get right.
One of the interesting things as a result of the sort of the fallout of the scandal is that Chung's lost a major backer. How problematic is that for him?
Well, we've seen that Mark Deniacek, he's a prominent property developer, philanthropist. He donated a significant amount of money to open a children's hospital in Wellington. Pretty well-respected figure. The number that I've seen reported around that was that Mark had donated or was willing to donate around $20,000 to Chung's campaign. Now, Chung has publicly said he's received about $200,000 in donations. I've heard other numbers that are even higher. So in terms of overall money, not actually a hugely significant amount for Chung. But even Chung has said, the real significance here is that a well-respected figure is publicly saying he doesn't have trust in him anymore.
How would you best sum up Chung for those who don't know who he is? And that includes the Prime Minister, apparently, who said he didn't know who he was.
I think Chung is an erratic figure. I've described him as Trump without the tactics, Winston Peters without the wit, Wayne Brown without the brains. I think he is very good at rallying that anger, that frustration, that sort of angry Facebook comment section thing. I just, genuinely, my honest opinion, I don't think he's got the mettle to back it up. I don't think he is particularly well informed on the issues. I don't think he's shown to be a particularly effective councillor or particularly informed or particularly detail-oriented. He hasn't proven to be an effective councillor, and I don't believe he'd be a particularly effective mayor. But he is a very active campaigner, very extroverted, always out and about, and always willing to say his piece, and that has been his real electoral strength.
You are on the ground in Wellington. What are people saying? Is he getting any support this week?
The thing is, he is. I mean, I just attended one of his campaign events last night in Miramar, and you know, it was a full room. We were in the Miramar Community Centre. They had to bring out extra chairs. There was standing room only. You know, they said that it was the most well-attended event they've had so far. So, you know, clearly this is getting attention for him. You know, it is raising his profile. Potentially it makes him a stronger candidate in a narrower lane, if you will. But you know, remember that Wellington's an STV election. You can't win with a split vote and just having a very strong support among a minority. You need eventually to get to that 50% mark. So being someone's second or third or fourth choice actually really matters. I think what's going to happen is that Ray will get a significant, you know, he will get a decent chunk of support. He'll get a very strong base behind him. But it might be well short of 50%.
What about the response for Tory whānau? What's it like on the ground at the moment?
For one, the fact that Tory is no longer running for mayor has taken a little bit of heat out of the opposition to her. And for two, I think there is a genuine sympathy for Tory because she has dealt with this before.
Wellington Mayor Tory whānau has admitted she has a drinking problem after another incident of drunken behaviour in public.
Tory whānau has admitted she has a problem with alcohol. Now, it comes after a drunken incident at a Wellington bar 2 weekends ago that the mayor believes may have been filmed.
This has been an ongoing trend, I think, about Tory whānau. There has just been this tendency for rumours, really baseless rumours about her to spread. There is a sense of whānau derangement syndrome, I think, out there among some of the Conservative opposition in Wellington. I think it is an interesting, you know, hypothetical to say what would happen here if Tory was still running for mayor, because, you know, she has, to some extent, jumped on the bullet here by releasing this quite sordid rumour about herself publicly, and in doing so has encouraged more people to talk about this quite horrible thing about herself because she wants to sort of expose the kind of candidate and councillor that Chung is. I think she has been a polarising figure, clearly, may not have won re-election as mayor, but I think she is quite well respected among sort of her base. And if anything, that respect is growing because they see the way she's been targeted. She's running in the Māori ward now. She's up against a fairly respected Labour candidate, but I think she has a very strong chance there and would bring, you know, a lot of mana to that position. So I think there's a very strong chance she ends up back on council, possibly even as deputy mayor.
So we have highlighted all the major players in the race, but who else is in the running?
Carl Tiefenbacher is the founder of Cafe Ice, an ice cream and coffee chain. He's running sort of in that centre-right lane. He's actually a fairly sensible, serious business type and might have actually got a bit more of attention if Ray Chung hadn't sort of sucked all of that up. You've got Kelvin Hastie, who is a conservationist, has a history in predator-free New Zealand. He's the main thing I've seen him publicly talking about is the need to put a roof on Sky Stadium, which, you know, I don't think is at the top of most voters' minds, but yeah, fair enough. Let's have a discussion about that. We've got Graham Bloxham, who's the owner of Wellington Live, a Facebook page / media company that has, you know, certainly caused a bit of controversy. That's sort of the top of the top of the list. Yeah.
If you take out these full-blown sort of character assassinations which have crept in, the key policies that could win or lose this election, what are they, do you reckon?
I think, quite clearly rates rises are on everyone's mind, and that applies in Wellington, but also just everywhere. I think around New Zealand, we're probably going to see a lot of incumbents lose because there's been rates rises in a lot of cities, and there will be a lot of discontent around that. There is, just this ongoing issue about the Golden Mile and about bike lanes and just the general use of space in the centre city and the way we prioritise transport choices. There is a significant base of voters who really want more bike lanes, more pedestrian spaces, a more walkable urbanistic centre city, and then there's also a very large chunk of voters who are frustrated that they're finding it harder to park, harder to get into the city by car, and I find that quite a fascinating topic because I think both sides try to make it about money, but it's really not about money. It's about the way that you think the city should function. And then it's kind of a dead issue because it's already been and gone, but for Andrew Little, not selling the airport shares has been this big rallying cry. He's promising he won't do it, even though the council already voted on not doing it. But that has been a big rallying point for Labour, especially because that is something that Tory whānau proposed, and Labour voters especially are very opposed to asset sales.
If you were a betting man, would you say Andrew Little is going to win by a lot, or is this going to be a tight race now?
I think there's still a long way to run, and I think the first and second choices are going to come into things quite a lot. In terms of the margin, I think we'll kind of see what happens with Ray Chung, see whether Alex Baker can kind of become a major candidate and prove that he's serious. That'll be sort of the factor there, but yeah, I think it's quite likely we have a blowout win for Andrew Little.
Now, this is a question I never thought I would ever have to ask you, Joel McManus, but are you a pimply-faced
little stuck-up millennial?
Well, I'm a millennial. I've been spending a lot of time looking at the mirror. I don't think I have any pimples at the moment, but they pop up every now and then. As for whether I'm stuck up, I don't know. You decide.
What do you want to say to Sean Plunkett?
I think I just want some, genuine constructive feedback on his skincare routine.
That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Joel McManus. This episode was produced by Alexia Russell and engineered by Ben Pearce. I'm Amanda Gillies. Mā te wā.